I'm Tony, 27M, and I've been dating Penelope, 25F, for about 8 months now. We met at a local pub quiz night, where I've been a regular for years. I'm part of a team called the Quizzards of Oz. Yeah, we're pretty proud of that name. Penelope showed up one night with a group of her coworkers, and their team absolutely destroyed us. I was impressed and, if I'm honest, a little intimidated by her encyclopedic knowledge of obscure facts. After the quiz, I worked up the courage to talk to her at the bar. We hit it off right away, bonding over our shared love of trivia, true crime podcasts, and dogs. Penelope works as a veterinary technician, which I find fascinating. I'm a software developer, and she actually seemed interested when I rambled on about my latest project. Our relationship has been great so far. Penelope is smart, funny, and we share a lot of common interests. She's introduced me to rock climbing, which I'm terrible at but enjoying anyway. I've gotten her hooked on my favorite sci-fi series. We've even started talking about moving in together, maybe getting a dog. Everything was going smoothly until last week when we had dinner with her best friend Taylor, 26F, and Taylor's boyfriend Chris, 28M. I'd met Taylor a few times before at group hangouts. She seemed nice enough, if a bit reserved. Taylor and Penelope have been friends since high school, and I know they're really close. This was my first time meeting Chris though, and boy, was it an experience. We decided to try out this new fusion restaurant that had just opened up in town. It's been all over social media, with people raving about their innovative menu. The place had a really cool vibe with dim lighting, eclectic decor, and these interesting art installations made from recycled kitchen utensils. As we were looking over the menu, Chris started asking the waiter a bunch of questions about every single dish. At first, I thought he was just being thorough, maybe he had some allergies or dietary restrictions. But it quickly became apparent that he had some very strange ideas about food. He kept insisting that any meat that wasn't well done was basically raw and dangerous to eat. When Taylor ordered a medium rare steak, Chris lectured her for 5 solid minutes about food poisoning risks. The waiter, a patient guy named Marcus who deserves a raise, tried to reassure him that medium rare was perfectly safe, but Chris wasn't having it. Things got even weirder when Penelope and I both ordered sushi rolls. Chris looked horrified and asked if we were sure we wanted to eat uncooked fish. I explained that sushi-grade fish is specially prepared to be safe for raw consumption, but he just shook his head. "I've heard about those parasites you can get from raw fish," he said. "You guys are taking a huge risk. Don't come crying to me when you're in the hospital with tapeworms." At this point, I was getting pretty annoyed, but I tried to keep things light. I joked that I'd been eating sushi for years and hadn't grown any extra appendages yet. Chris didn't laugh. Taylor looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything. When our food arrived, Chris made a big show of thoroughly inspecting every bite before eating it. He sent back his chicken twice for being undercooked even though it looked perfectly fine to me. Poor Marcus was at his wit's end, but remained professional throughout. Things came to a head when Chris saw Penelope eating her sushi. He actually reached across the table and tried to grab her chopsticks, saying, "I can't let you poison yourself." That was the last straw for me. I told Chris to back off and mind his own business. I said his behavior was ridiculous and he was ruining everyone's meal with his ignorance about food safety. I might have raised my voice a bit, I'll admit. The stress of the evening had gotten to me. Chris got all huffy and defensive. He said I was being reckless and that he was just looking out for everyone's health. Taylor jumped in to defend him, saying I was being needlessly aggressive. Penelope just sat there looking mortified. The rest of the dinner was super awkward. We ate in tense silence, punctuated only by Chris's occasional muttering about food safety. We ended up leaving early, with Chris still going on about food poisoning as we walked out. I made sure to leave Marcus an extra big tip for putting up with all this. In the car on the way home, Penelope told me I had embarrassed her by confronting Chris. She said I should have just ignored his comments and kept things pleasant. I disagreed. I felt like Chris was way out of line and someone needed to stand up to him. We've never really fought before, but this turned into a pretty heated argument. Penelope said I have anger issues and need to learn to let things go. I think she's being unreasonable and enabling Chris's bizarre behavior. I pointed out that Chris was the one who made a scene in the restaurant, not me. She countered that I escalated things by yelling at him. We went back and forth like this for a while. I brought up how Chris tried to physically stop her from eating her food, which I felt crossed a major line. Penelope admitted that was inappropriate but said I still overreacted. By the time I dropped her off at her apartment, we were both frustrated and upset. Now Penelope isn't talking to me beyond terse text messages. Taylor is apparently blowing up her phone about what an awful boyfriend I am. I'm feeling confused and hurt. Am I really the asshole here? I feel like I was just standing up for myself and Penelope against this guy's ridiculous food paranoia. But now I'm starting to doubt myself. I've always prided myself on being a level-headed guy. In my job as a software developer, I have to stay calm under pressure and deal with difficult people all the time. But something about this situation really got under my skin. Maybe it's because things with Penelope have been going so well, and this feels like our first real bump in the road. Part of me wonders if I'm overreacting because of some baggage from my last relationship. My ex was constantly trying to control what I ate, pushing her latest fad diet on me and making snide comments if I indulged in junk food. It took me a while after that relationship to feel comfortable enjoying food again without guilt. Maybe that's why Chris's behavior bothered me so much? I've been replaying the evening over and over in my head, wondering if I could have handled things differently. Should I have just kept my mouth shut and let Chris rant? But then I think about how uncomfortable Penelope looked when he tried to grab her chopsticks, and I feel justified in speaking up. I'm also worried about the state of my relationship with Penelope. We've never had a fight like this before. What if this is a deal breaker for her? The thought of losing her over this is making me sick to my stomach. I tried calling Penelope this morning to talk things out, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message asking if we could meet up and discuss things calmly, but I haven't heard back yet. The silence is killing me. I'm considering reaching out to Taylor to try and smooth things over, but I'm not sure if that would make things better or worse. On one hand, I want to explain my side of things. On the other hand, I'm still pretty angry about how she and Chris behaved. So here I am, turning to Reddit for advice. Am I the asshole for confronting Chris about his food behavior? Should I have just kept quiet to keep the peace? How do I fix things with Penelope? Any input would be appreciated because right now, I'm feeling pretty lost. Update 1, thanks for all the responses to my original post. Reading through the comments gave me a lot to think about. I decided to try talking things out with Penelope again once we'd both had some time to cool down. I invited her over to my place for dinner last night. I cooked her favorite pasta dish, a recipe I learned from my Italian grandmother. It's become a bit of a tradition for us, something I make whenever we need to have a serious talk. As we sat down to eat, I could feel the tension in the air. We both knew we needed to address what happened, but neither of us seemed to know where to start. Finally, I broke the ice by apologizing for losing my cool at the restaurant. I explained that while I still felt Chris's behavior was out of line, I could have handled it more tactfully. I admitted that I let my frustration get the better of me and that I shouldn't have raised my voice. Penelope seemed to appreciate my apology. She reached across the table and took my hand, which felt like a good sign. She admitted that Chris can be a bit much sometimes, but said that Taylor has been her best friend since childhood and she feels protective of her. Then Penelope shared some background information that I hadn't known before. Apparently, Chris has some kind of anxiety disorder that manifests as extreme germophobia, especially around food. This was news to me. I had just assumed he was being difficult. I was a bit skeptical at first. It seemed like she was making excuses for him. But then Penelope told me something that put everything in a new light. Taylor and Chris met in an inpatient program for eating disorders 3 years ago. They bonded over their shared struggles and started dating after they were both discharged. Penelope explained that in high school, Taylor had struggled with anorexia. It got so bad that she had to be hospitalized during their senior year. Penelope had visited her friend in the hospital every day, watching helplessly as Taylor battled her demons. It was a traumatic time for both of them. Chris, on the other hand, had dealt with severe orthorexia, an obsession with eating foods he considered healthy and pure. His fixation on food safety stems from this disorder. He's made a lot of progress, but still struggles with food-related anxiety. Learning all this gave me a new perspective on the situation. I still think Chris's behavior was disruptive, but I can understand it better now. I felt a pang of guilt for how harshly I had judged him. Penelope and I talked for hours, delving into our own histories with food and body image. I opened up about my ex who had tried to control my eating habits, something I hadn't really discussed with Penelope before. She shared her own struggles with yo-yo dieting in college. We agreed that in the future, we'd try to be more patient and understanding with Chris, while also setting some boundaries if things get out of hand. Penelope suggested that for future group dinners, we could choose restaurants with menus that would be less stressful for Chris. The conversation then shifted to our relationship. We both acknowledged that this was our first real fight, and that we needed to work on our communication. Penelope admitted that she should have told me about Chris's background before the dinner. I promised to try and stay calmer in tense situations. We ended up talking late into the night, clearing the air and coming out stronger as a couple. Penelope stayed over, and things between us felt back to normal, maybe even better than before. The next day, I reached out to Taylor to apologize for the scene at the restaurant. She was pretty frosty at first, but seemed to thaw a bit when I explained that Penelope had filled me in on some of the background. We're not best friends or anything, but at least things are civil now. I'm still not sure how to handle future interactions with Chris. His issues are clearly more complex than I initially realized. I want to be supportive of Penelope's friendship with Taylor, but I also don't want to subject myself to uncomfortable dinners on a regular basis. Penelope and I agreed we'd take things on a case-by-case basis for now. Overall, I'm feeling cautiously optimistic. This whole experience has taught me a lot about the importance of communication and not jumping to conclusions. It's also made me realize how much I care about Penelope and our relationship. I'm glad we were able to work through this together. Thanks again to everyone who weighed in with advice. It really helped me gain perspective on the situation. I'll post another update if anything significant happens, but for now, I'm just looking forward to moving past this and continuing to build my relationship with Penelope. Update 2. Well, things have taken an unexpected turn. Last weekend, Penelope and I decided to host a small dinner party at my place. We thought it would be a good opportunity for everyone to start fresh. We invited a few close friends, including Taylor and Chris. I spent days planning a menu that I hoped would work for everyone, a mix of cooked and raw options, with everything clearly labeled. I even called Chris beforehand to check if he had any specific concerns I should be aware of. He seemed appreciative of the effort. The evening started off well. Chris seemed tense when he arrived, but was making an effort to be polite. He even complimented the appetizers I had prepared. Taylor looked relieved, and Penelope gave me an encouraging smile. We were all chatting and enjoying ourselves. I was starting to think we had turned a corner in our relationship with Taylor and Chris. But then came dessert. I had made a tiramisu, my grandmother's recipe. As I was serving it, I mentioned that it contained raw eggs in the traditional recipe. I thought I was being helpful by providing that information up front. Chris immediately tensed up and started interrogating me about food safety. I calmly explained the risks were minimal with fresh, properly handled eggs. I even showed him the pasteurized eggs I had used, specifically chosen to address any safety concerns. But Chris wasn't listening. His face had gone pale and he was starting to sweat. Suddenly, he jumped up and knocked the whole tiramisu onto the floor. He started yelling about how I was trying to poison everyone. It was chaos. Taylor was crying, Penelope was trying to calm Chris down, and our other friends looked shell-shocked. In the midst of this, as I was trying to clean up the mess on the floor, I noticed something odd. Chris's sleeve had ridden up, revealing what looked like fresh track marks on his arm. Suddenly his erratic behavior made a lot more sense. I discreetly pointed it out to Penelope, whose face fell. Taylor managed to usher Chris out, apologizing profusely. After they left, Penelope broke down. Turns out Chris had struggled with drug addiction in the past, in addition to his eating disorder. He'd been clean for years, but Penelope had suspected he might have relapsed recently. Taylor had confided in her about some worrying behavior, but they had both been in denial about what it might mean. I feel terrible for judging him so harshly before. Addiction is a brutal disease. At the same time, his behavior is clearly destructive and I'm worried about how it's affecting Penelope and Taylor. Penelope and I stayed up late talking it over. She's torn between wanting to support her friend and recognizing that the situation has become untenable. I'm doing my best to be supportive without pushing her in any particular direction. For now, we've agreed to take a step back from socializing with Taylor and Chris while they hopefully get Chris the help he needs. It's a sad situation all around. I'll post another update if there are any major developments. Update 3. I wasn't sure if I'd be posting another update, but recent events have changed things significantly. About 3 weeks ago, Penelope got a frantic call from Taylor in the middle of the night. Chris had overdosed and was in the hospital. Penelope rushed to be with Taylor, and I went along to offer support. It was a tense night in the ER waiting room. Fortunately, Chris pulled through, but it was a close call. Seeing Taylor's fear and anguish really drove home how serious the situation had become. This incident seemed to be a wake-up call for everyone. Chris agreed to enter an inpatient rehab program. Taylor has been attending Al-Anon meetings and therapy to work on setting healthier boundaries. It's been a difficult time for both of them, but they're taking positive steps. Penelope has been spending a lot of time supporting Taylor through all this. I'll admit, I was a bit jealous of how much of Penelope's energy was going towards Taylor and Chris's situation. But seeing how much it meant to Penelope to be there for her friend, I did my best to be understanding. Last week, Chris completed his 30-day rehab program. Taylor organized a small gathering to welcome him home, and Penelope and I were invited. I was apprehensive, but it actually went surprisingly well. Chris seemed like a different person, calmer, more self-aware. He pulled me aside at one point to apologize sincerely for his past behavior. We had a good talk about his struggles and the work he's doing in recovery. I gained a lot of respect for him. Things aren't perfect, recovery is a long road and there will likely be bumps along the way. But I feel cautiously optimistic. Penelope and I are in a good place, and our friend group feels stronger for having weathered this storm together. This whole experience has taught me a lot about empathy, the importance of looking beyond surface behaviors, and the power of support in overcoming adversity. Thanks to everyone who followed along with this saga, your input and advice along the way was truly appreciated.